During this instructional video, I will show teachers how to attach benchmarks to units. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and go to one of my courses, Dan's Sample Science, and let's go to this brand new unit here called Rock Formations, and notice in the benchmarks area there are no benchmarks. Notice in this water unit there's benchmarks attached. So what I want to do is I want to show you how they got there. And we'll do that by going to the unit called Rock Formations. So I'll go to Benchmark Rock Formations, and anytime you see a paperclip, that signifies to attach. So let's attach benchmarks. And what it does is it's bringing up my full list of benchmarks for second grade. And so there's maybe about 20 to 30 benchmarks in here. And by the way, real quick, a note about structure. We call these strands, we call these standards, and these are our benchmarks. So the strands and standards are a nice way to organize so that it's not just one huge list of benchmarks. Right now I'm only looking at second grade benchmarks. That's what this O2 signifies. But if I uncheck this box, notice it says right now it's showing only the benchmarks that are attached to this course. So if I uncheck that, now notice it's showing these happen to be 00. That means kindergarten standards. And then here's our first grade benchmarks, second grade benchmarks. And so this has all of our benchmarks K through 12. There's a huge list, as you can see. So it's really handy if your curriculum admin person or folks would attach the appropriate standards for you ahead of time, because there's really no reason for you to even see, for instance, if I'm a second grade teacher, to see the high school benchmarks. So I'm going to go ahead and check on that. Notice now it's a much more manageable list. So for this particular unit, I'm going to go ahead and say that this benchmark we're going to instruct on, as well as this one. But then this make accurate measurements with appropriate units, I'm going to assess. So let's talk about these. We call these learning depths. Not covered, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Means we're not covering it in this unit. And that's what's the default, obviously, for all these. But then if you come in and change from not covered to instructed, that means I'm going to teach this benchmark in this unit. So here's another one. I'm going to teach this. Assessed means that you're not only going to teach it, but you're going to assess it as well. So it's almost like a hierarchy, if you will. Because sometimes folks will ask, well, how do you assess it and instruct it? Well, the assumption is if you're assessing it, you better be teaching it. So again, it's not covered, or you're teaching it, or you're going to teach it and assess it, in which case you would choose the assessed option. So let's go ahead and click Save. And so now notice if I open my unit a bit further so I can see it all, it has all three of my benchmarks. The A designates that it is assessed, the I instructed. And so if you want to see the full description of any of these, you can click on it very quickly. And notice what it does is it opens it up and expands it, shows you everything you might want to even know about it, as well as courses where it's attached to, the program, the strand, the standard, and so forth. And I can close that. We'll close this one as well. If you need to edit the ones that are added, you can simply click on this again, and notice you're going to see those toward the top. So I can go in here again and I can say, okay, let's also, I meant to assess this one instead. I just want to instruct this one. So that's a quick way in which you can edit your list. One other note about the benchmarks, or two things actually, is if you're looking through here, we do have a nice keyword search. So for instance, if I'm looking for all the benchmarks that have the word observation in, notice it narrows the list down quite a bit further. And so now notice it brings up the ones that have the word observation in. So that's a real nice quick way to be able to find benchmarks. The other thing I wanted to point out is, even though this is a science unit, if it's a multidisciplinary unit, you can pull up standards from other areas. So I'm going to pull up math, and you might say, wait a minute, there's no math benchmarks there. And the reason why is because there's no math benchmarks attached to this course. So I might have to uncheck that then and But I could still say, you know what, let's look at the ones that are attached to second grade, and these are some math ones, and I can save those as well. So again, even though it's a science unit, you can actually go ahead and attach non-science benchmarks as well. So this now concludes this instructional video on how to attach benchmarks to your units.